Hello and welcome to another Six Sages Gaming Meta Report. Today we're going to be talking about Opus 2, where it stands, the decks we've seen, and where it might be going. So what we have for you is going to be the what we think to be the top performing decks, and if you haven't already, make sure to check out FFTCGmognet.com/blog, for that's where we've been putting a lot of the top 8 lists. Now, keeping in mind we don't put every top 8 up there. Some lists only have participants from 20 odd events, and there's just several events every weekend. So just to make it a little bit easier on myself, because as of right now I'm the only person managing both Six Sages Gaming videos outside Duel Series and Mognet for content, so I just can't do it all. And on that note, we will be having some future updates about how you guys might be able to further support us and hopefully get some more writers on Mognet. But I will be doing either another video about that or having some more information on that down the road. So enough rambling, let's get right into the meta report that we have. Again, keeping in mind that the starters for Opus 3 will happen a month before the set launches, so that's why we're doing this a little bit earlier than what you might think if you're just going booster to booster. So if you watched our first video, you knew that overwhelmingly everything was mono element, mono fire, mono lightning, the two biggest, and we have certainly seen a shift towards now the duo element decks or two color element decks, perhaps to no one's surprise. The thing that is quite shocking is Rome had a national qualifier event, so they're much larger tournament, much more higher stakes, if you will. And Mono Lightning was either 4 or 5 of the top 8 of that event. So I think that when we look at the bigger picture, yes, it was one event, so that might skew the numbers a little bit, but I would certainly think that Mono Lightning is holding up as the better mono-colored deck in the end right now, simply because of how insanely good al-cid is. But we can talk about that more, or it's been beaten enough that everyone understands why it's a good card. And then of course it's an ever-evolving meta, as we said at the end of the video, and as I'm going to say now and probably at the end of the video again. Things are going to constantly change. I've talked to a couple people in the UK. I've got their thoughts on the meta, what they've been playing there, and where they think the meta is going to go. And it was a very great discussion about the different card interactions and what might be coming up next. So I'm really looking forward to see where their other regionals go. And of course, they have their big national event at the end of the month at their London Comic-Con, which is a huge deal as well. So we are now just going to be getting right into the list, kind of again the top 4 major things that we've seen. And I really won't spend a lot of time on this list because it's Golbez. We know it's so good. It's been around forever, and literally no one is surprised. Again, there's just so many key things that this deck has. Again, just the Earth Lightning core in itself is very, very good, and then just the pure card advantage that Golbez can bring is absolutely insane. So there's the visual list and the text list. Of course, yes, as I mentioned, Golbez, when he dies, you get to bring 4 other cards out. Now, not only is that good for saying splitting out the damage if your opponent's not playing Earth, maybe you have Kefka on the board, so then each one of those guys can trade up if necessary. It just gets you more burst damage in a turn, and you saw this deck also plays Gapal, so very easily you can just attack with Golbez, Kefka to break it on your next turn, have Gapal in hand, drop Gapal, give your entire team plus a 4,000, and they're all either going to trade up with one of your opponent's forwards or get in for damage. So no matter what, you automatically put your opponent in a losing position. Again, if they have Heroic Yuna or Shantoto, there are a number of ways to interact with the deck and make sure that they just don't kill you on, say, turn 2 or something. Yes, Golbez will still have the nut draws, but after talking to some of the UK guys, they actually viewed it as not a threat at all for the second deck that we're going to talk about, simply because of how many utilities, different things it had going for it. Now, the interesting one that I ended up adding, and again, I want to give a shout out to Richard Zapp for this one because, again, he was absolutely right. The Larsa was just an amazing addition towards the deck, and I did have the chance to play a bit more with Mono Lightning. Now, again, it's obviously better if you're able to attack with it, so it's dulled before they have that opportunity to al-cid it, but I was able to, break Golbez, get my 4 guys, play Gapal, attack out with my team, and then they tried to al-cid the Gapal because that was the only legal target that they had, and just couldn't do anything. So just by having Larsa in the deck, I was able to lock my opponent out of the al-cid plan, which again, when Mono Lightning is so relevant, is absolutely an amazing spot to be in. So up next, we're going to be talking about the Warrior Elite list. Now, this is the list from the UK event. And again, huge shout out to Dark Sphere for hosting the event and getting these lists for us and putting it all together. But This list is all about, you'll see it's mostly wind. There's definitely some very strong water cards as well, but it really comes down to a wind Warrior of Light type of deck. When you get to have Heroic Bards, and you get to have these other cards that just say, hey, untap all your stuff, play something again. And I think one of my favorite plays from the Champion of the Dark Sphere event was that he was able to have a turn where he had, 2 cards in hand and 5 backups, or he was empty-handed and drawn into, I forget which it was, but he was able to tap his 5 backups, play Barts, and again, it was untaps win characters, so backups as well. So he had Yuna and 4, doesn't matter, win backups, activated all of them, and was able to play another card out of their hand. So there's these times where you can even do that, and then you can say play Pain into another water card, because then you can untap Yuna if you have Yuna and Riku. There's just a lot of very high-driven turns that you get to flood the board like that. And if your opponent's not playing Earth, just flood the board all you want. Of course, you could say if they're playing Water, you have to be a little cautious as well. It's not as common to see Cloud of Darkness currently, so that's, take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, Shantoto's a big one. It's in every single Earth deck, but there's often games where you flood the board and then just win off mill, get in a couple points of damage, hit the mill plan so you can race that way, because you're going to tutor cards and draw cards, of course, and be very effective. So again, Warrior Light, this card with Minwoo is just nuts. Maria makes it a 9k, it can block up to a 10k without dying, and then obviously Minwoo just says, hey, I'm going to reduce the damage, so I'm just going to block everything. So again, if you deal, what would that be with Sessile on board, something insane like 13 or 14,000 or something, sure, you can break it that way, but realistically it's a very difficult card to get off the board when you have Minwoo, Maria, and Sessile all together. Now again, the key cards I talked about is just being able to untap things, being able to flood the board, is Barts and Little Barts, basically. Activate all your wind characters, or if you're playing the little version, you get to activate 2 wind characters, which again is probably often going to be good enough to, at the very least, leave up Riku and another one where you can mill your opponent, which again is a way that people were able to win with this deck. So that's not to go unnoticed. So again, just a huge tempo-driven deck that can swarm the board when your opponent might not be expecting it. And if they're not playing Earth, they can fall behind very, very quickly. And of course, one of the things that I absolutely love about Wind Water, as you guys know, it's one of my probably Wind Water and Lightning Ice are my 2 favorite combinations right now, but the YRP or Riku Pain combo is just what I love so much about it. Mill Riku is great for breaking stalls. Pain, the starter, is just an insane card. I mean, getting to play a free 7,000, so it's an 8,000. It's an 8,000 3 drop in this deck. Getting to untap, draw a card, and have a body is just so strong. And of course, Yuna is clutch in this deck with the Impure and Leviathan to make them reduced by 1. So if you're playing a Wind Water deck, now the rare Yuna is up for debate and or including some numbers of Heroic Yuna, so obviously play with those numbers, but these 3 cards absolutely need to go in every single Wind Water deck. And then we're going to be talking about Lightning Ice. A small editor's note here, if you will, about Lightning Ice is I picked this one just because it was an interesting note that, yes, it looks very much like a mono lightning deck that just has splashed for ice, but we've also seen the inverse as well, so ice with a splash of lightning. This one obviously is more lightning driven because it plays Ida, so no surprise there, but I wanted to at least make that note here, or make that comment that yes, mono decks have evolved into this dual element decks. Some of them are very light on their splashes. Some of them, gear towards a pure 50-50. There is a lot of variation in those decks, but I thought this was an interesting list, and I really liked a lot what it had going for it. Obviously, again, just Rinoa, Devout, and Vayne are kind of like the 3 key cards of Ice right now. That those 3 just really bring it all together. So those are what really can help push the deck. So what did it gain the most? Of course, Rinoa. It's a legendary. Just obviously it's a good card itself. Even without any Final Fantasy VIII guys on the board, it gives you the ability to threaten a point of damage, where if you build up this board, say, and just attack with her first, your opponent says, well, if I block this, I have to take the other 3 points of damage. So often she'll just get in for a free point of damage every single turn. And turns out that's often just good enough sometimes. Again, Vayne and Devout, I mentioned this, but my favorite thing about this deck is so often I'd be able to lock my opponent's Emperor and a Tifa. Sometimes they play both, mistakenly, of course, but then we'll spend a lot of resources, try to kill Vayne on my turn. While their stuff is still tapped, just use Devout, bring him right back. There's just so much utility that Devout offers in the different value plays that you can get out of it that absolutely make it worth playing in every single ice deck. And again, Vayne is just too good right now, really, not to include. And then lastly, the Emperor. What I've been finding is when I'm playing the ice decks, I really like to have the Emperor as just kind of a say no, if you will. And it really helps interact with things like if they have a Kefka, you have to just turn those off sometimes. And it's otherwise just a good card. I don't think I would ever want to play Warrior of Light in this list specifically, but the Emperor is a nice dark card. I did tease with the idea of playing a Zemus, just because sometimes if you have a Mon plus Zemus, you can just make those last point of damage guaranteed, but I think that's overkill. So really the more, I want to play test it a bit, but I think the Emperor is really just going to be the best light and dark card that you could splash in this deck. And then lastly, we have Earth Water. This one's a bit more interesting because it plays Gabranth at 3, which isn't something that we've always seen, but this is your more traditional, I want to grind out the game. I'm going to play these big beefy dudes, play some control elements in the form of Shantoto or Raban, and just grind out the game. And of course, Ashe and Astrologian being able to activate themselves is extremely relevant as well. This list was interesting because it plays the Emperor instead of Warrior Light. But you'll see lists that go back and forth on each of them. If I was personally going to be playing the Earth Water list now, I would be playing the Warrior Light and Ingus, I believe is how you say his name, combination, because there's just so much value you can get out of those two that I really like the Earth Water list. And again, anyone that knows me, I'll just say it now, you can bet a lot of money that I'll be playing some Earth-based deck in California for the National Qualifier event, or National Tournament, I should say. To go to Worlds, because there's just so many great tools that Earth has. I just think it's either going to be water or it's going to be lightning. I really do like Earth lightning a lot, but that is for another video. So Vincent, again, no surprise, still here. Death penalty is insane. He cannot be broken by opposing summons or abilities that don't deal damage. So it's just a great value, a value AK that has the potential to have in that insane death penalty play that can just win you the game. So it just creates a threat that your opponent has to answer in one way or another. Ashe, as I mentioned, she gets to activate herself. And the important note here, Ashe has significantly increased in play strictly as a response to the Mono Lightning decks. You can't al-cid it, you can't ping it away otherwise, because it's just going to keep getting bigger. And of course, when you have Minwu, that just makes it damn near invincible outside of Odin or something of that nature. But Ashe has gained so much value with the way that the meta has evolved that, very early on the card was borderline unplayable, and now as the al-cid decks really start to pick up, it's certainly getting a lot better. I think there's probably a nice water variant list with her as well, with just being able to activate your guys, Minwu, play Leviathan, make her a 9k out of nowhere, and then if you have the walk up back up, she's a 10k. So I'd really like to see where that goes. But a very interesting card that I think has been missed a lot in the early meta report, and now we're finally seeing it. And I have a guess that this is going to stay towards the end, depending on how the meta evolves, but we will see. And then lastly, Sessile. Now this is a card that I have a lot to say about, but maybe that will be its own special video. I'm a little upset that every time I had talked to someone who made top 8 in the recent regionals and larger events, the conversation of why Sessile was good more or less boiled down to, well, my opponent didn't read my cards. And when I'm trying to, qualify or quantify, how did Sessile play out in your deck? How good was it? Where did you really like to see it? And the conversation boils down to that it is a bit aggravating. So again, very early on, I picked this card because I loved it. I loved the effect. I had no idea how rampant Mono Lightning would be or how relevant al-cid would be. But I think now it's just getting too much play for the wrong reasons, which, you know what, if a card gives you free wins, so to speak, play it. If you can, while you can. Certainly some people will say that, but I really do wonder where this card will sit when everyone knows what they're doing. And again, I don't mean that in any way in a bad manner. A lot of people are playing a new trading card game for the first time. Please bring your questions to the tournaments, play some honest games with your opponents. That's not the point of the conversation here. It's really just to talk about the card as itself. Let's take away from the game element for a moment and see why this is good. So again, I've made this mistake myself. Make sure you know what your opponent is playing, and just be prepared to be very upset if you get caught off guard by this. So that was our very quick meta report. Of course, there's going to be more to come. We will be doing another kind of, hey, this is the end of Opus II Meta video, probably a couple weeks after the last big London event, or I shouldn't say a big London event because only 16 players are going to be there, but you get the idea. And just to understand, okay, we'll then have the full picture of where the meta went, and then the starters are going to come out for Opus 3 featuring the Final Fantasy 9 and Final Fantasy Type O characters, or Type 0, where we'll see how that plays in the meta and if that really does play a role, or if their support will have to wait until Opus 3 where they'll become more relevant. So that is all I have for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this very quick run through. Again, if you haven't already, please check out Mognet, FFTCG, We've been doing a ton of work to try to get it up and get more content out there for you guys. So we're gonna have some more writers down the road, and we're gonna have a lot more announcements coming up, hopefully in the very, very near future. So thank you very much for watching. Again, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We greatly appreciate all your support, and we'll catch you on the next Six Sages Gaming video. Have a good one.